Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short coming at you again with another video. We are giving an update on a video that I did last week, and it was on the issue of school meals, and we were talking about the situation in Waukesha, Wisconsin. The school district there had implemented a modification on the free lunch program. The Biden administration in April had handed down an executive order that would basically give all schools free lunches for all students. And so Waukesha School Board met, and they decided that they would buck that trend and say, no, we're not going to give out free lunches to all students, because all students come from families that don't actually need that subsidy, that welfare specific program. And so there are plenty of students in the Waukesha School District, I think it's the 70% maybe, who actually come from homes that they can pay for a school lunch. They can pay for their meal, breakfast at school. They can actually get by without having the government subsidize their lunch. And so they said, no, we're going to turn that down. We're not going to give students at the Waukesha School District free lunches, because they, quite frankly, don't need free lunches. And the ones that do need free lunches because of the need, low-income family, poverty level, so forth, they can apply just as they did before, and they can get accepted. And some 25, 30% of the students in the Waukesha School District have done that, and they get a free lunch. So the ones that need a free lunch get a free lunch. The ones that don't need a free lunch don't get a free lunch. Makes sense, right? Well, because of the panic and the hyperbole and the media attention, the Waukesha School Board reverses decision to cut universal free meals. So the school board has basically given way to the cancel mob, the outrage mob, and they've let themselves be bullied into doing something that initially they had decided that they wouldn't do. And this is sad, because I basically highlighted their story last week because I thought it was an example of something positive taking place, where school districts are actually turning down this free goodie benefits welfare program that the government is trying to push on all schools. The school district in Waukesha actually initially turned it down, which is a good and healthy thing. As a Christian, we read in the Bible, it talks about if a man does not work, he should not eat. And that poverty is something that we should be aware of and help those truly and needy, but we don't have to, and we're not obligated to, and actually we shouldn't subsidize everyone the same way that we would subsidize someone in poverty, because if you do that, then you get a dependency class. You get everyone used to getting government welfare handouts, and then everyone loses incentive to actually struggle and make their way through life. And so it's really a crippling effect, and that's what that passage is talking about, that able-bodied men who are able to work should be working, and the government should not give them free handouts as far as welfare and food stamps. They should not be subsidizing people who can do the work. And it's the same way with the families. The government should not be subsidizing families feeding their children when they can do so perfectly well, and should do so perfectly well, because that's the created order. Parents provide for their children. Parents are responsible adults, so they should equip their children with whatever they need. And now, if they're physically incapable of doing that, if there's injury, they're crippled, they're somehow factors that are beyond their control, then yeah, we want to step in and offer charity. But charity for all, regardless of their ability to pay? No, that's counterintuitive, and it's not only counterintuitive, it's anti-biblical. It's not Christian. Christian are big in charity, but we're not just big in crippling people and stifling their incentives and healthy motives by turning them into wards of the state. And that's what this school board was initially concerned about. Well, they've reversed. So let's read from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Let's read what has happened, the latest on this Waukesha School District fiasco now. And there's a picture of the school. It might be a school breakfast. I think what happens here, as in many schools across the country, the students actually come in the door in the morning and they grab a bag full of food. And they take it to their first class for the day, and they eat it right there in the classroom. Yeah, that's what it says. Students pick up cereal breakfast before school at Bethune Academy in Milwaukee, where meals are free for all students. The school district of Waukesha opted to end a federally funded program this fall that would continue providing free meals for all students. So these kids come in, just like this girl is doing. They give the name, and then they're given a free breakfast, and they take it to their class, and they eat their breakfast during the first hour of their school. And they don't have to give any proof of having qualified for the program. They don't have to have any kind of income requirements. They don't have to live, below the poverty level or have some kind of hardship in their family. They can just come in. These can be kids of millionaires. These can be children of billionaires. These kids can be children of executives in the auto industry or high-tech companies. They can, their family can be living in the biggest house in town, and they still come in and they get a free breakfast and free lunch. And that's what the school board initially was saying. No, that doesn't make no sense. It makes no sense. It's illogical. It's irrational. And yeah, according to the Bible, there are actually moral components to it. It incentivizes people to not take care of their children. Here's what it says. Waukesha School Board members reversed their controversial decision to leave. It's controversial because we live in such a welfare-heavy mentality today in the modern world that, thanks to the radical left and the Democrats, Joe Biden, and basically the progressives, as they're called, thanks to them and the mass media that's behind everything and the big tech companies, we live in a socialist-minded society. And the idea that you would make people who have the means to pay actually pay, that's controversial, I guess. But anyway, that's how they describe it. Controversial decision to leave federal free meals program with a split vote Monday following national uproar and local protests. The national uproar that followed was because the news media, which is leftist and socialist leaning, they made it an issue. They stuck their nose into Waukesha's business and basically bullied the school district into changing. In an incendiary meeting with two lively overflow rooms, debate ranged from the finger points of feeding students to ideological arguments linking free meals to mask mandates and critical race theory. So it looks like, again, the culture wars. There was a cultural divide. On the one hand, there are the liberal, leftist, radical progressives, socialist-leaning Democrats who want all kinds of free entitlement programs from the government. They want to raise your taxes. They want big government spending. They want large government taxation, huge progressive income taxing, and they want to build a socialist society. On the other hand, there are the personal responsibility, more traditionalist, Judeo-Christian, biblical thinking people that say, wait, we don't need to give free meals to people that can afford to pay for the meals. That's not charity. That's socialism. Socialism gives everyone the same thing, and then they also take away what you have to make the people who, say, are lower income have the same things everyone has, because they take from the rich and give to the poor, and they take from the middle class and give to the poor. They take from everyone because they want to raise you in the nanny state. So they want to be your nanny and take care of you from cradle to grave. And that's the idea of socialism, and here we see it at the school level. They're going to provide free meals to all students, no matter if the families are millionaires or billionaires or the kids are filthy rich, and they drive to school in their BMWs or whatever. It doesn't matter. They're getting free meals because that's what socialism is all about, giving government goodies to everyone. Board members voted 5-4, so it was pretty close, to rescind their previous decision and opt to participate this school year in a federally funded program that has already been providing free school breakfast and lunch to all students in response to the pandemic. So here they finally do mention the fact that they are giving out free breakfasts and they're giving out free lunches. And they didn't mention, but they usually also hand out, on Friday at least, they hand out food for the weekend, as if the assumption is these kids won't have anything to eat. Their parents won't give them anything. Well, here's the rule, and this is human nature, but the Bible talks about it. If you give students, children, food on Friday before school lets out to take home on the weekends, then that's what the parents will do. The parents of the children will let the school keep feeding their children. They will let the schools continue to do what they should be doing, and they will continue to neglect their responsibility. If you let them do that, they will do that. And so this school board was just trying to introduce some common sense and some, basic wisdom that people have known for a long time. And finally, they caved in because there were maybe one or two people on that board who said, no, we've got to go along with what everybody else is doing. So they changed their decision. The district had been the only eligible district in the state to opt out of the program, according to the State Department of Public Instructions. There's nothing wrong with that, being the only one. If they have good reason for doing it, then that's reason enough. Following the crowd, following the lemons jumping off the cliff is not wise. You do things not because everybody else is doing it. That's a basic rule that parents should be teaching their children also. You don't do everything just because somebody else is doing it, or you don't do something because everybody else is doing it. You think about it, and if it's wise, you do it. If it's not, you don't do it, whether anyone else or everyone else is doing it. Superintendent James Siebert asked board members to reconsider their previous decision, noting the program would help families experiencing situational poverty due to the pandemic, who might not qualify for free meals under the district's traditional program. So the appeal, I guess, was, well, there are people who might not qualify under the current guidelines, and so they need help too, might not qualify. I think the old standard was probably very generous, but they're basically saying, well, we want everyone to have a school lunch. We want to have that socialist vision, and let's just make it happen. And so they came up with a way to make it sound like there was a rational, important reason, but I don't see the important reason. There might be some people that just barely don't make it, but then if the original policy was generous, then those people actually can afford to give their children and should afford to give their children a good lunch and pay for it. Every eligible Wisconsin school district is providing all students free meals this year except Waukesha. Some board members said they received threats and been doxxed after the Washington Post reported on their choice to end the program. You see, here is the pressure. Here is the cancel mob. Here's Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and you get all of this social media pressure and mainstream media pressure to do something. And then they go so far as to dox, which is basically stating a person's name and giving out their personal information like their home address, telephone number, where they work, and just using that to threaten them and pressure them and cajole them into changing. That's the dirty tricks that the left uses. That's what the Washington Post, after their report. So the mainstream media, they don't have to do the dirty work. All they have to do is just continue to spotlight something they don't like, and then the internet does the rest. And they cause people, some people can lose their jobs, some people can lose their homes, their livelihood. Just cancel a person, cancel culture. And they can do that to whomever they want if they're willing to take it that far. Some said if the board reversed course, it would be giving into a hateful mob and giving over to power to federal government. Well, the hateful mob is actually something that we can all see. If someone is being doxxed, that is the result of a hateful mob. Threats, that's what a mob does. They threaten, they bully, they terrorize, they might riot in the streets, but they can do other things other than burning buildings down. They can actually destroy lives in different ways. And yeah, that's true, patently true. And then giving power to the federal government. Obviously, it gives power to the federal government. If you get very dependent on the federal government, then you have to, he who pays the piper picks the tune. It's time for parents and community members to start paying attention to the forces at work here, board member Kelly said. When the federal government is responsible for feeding all students at all times, regardless of need, they have ultimate power and authority, and we don't need local school boards anymore. Exactly. That creeping socialism, that was the term that was used before this insanity. This board member, who was interrupted by applause as she spoke, said it wasn't about food anymore, but about national influences on local school boards. She likened the debate to those about structural racism and COVID precautions. This is how we got CRT and filthy books and vaccine mandates, all this stuff, she said, referring to critical race theory. Again, that is the leftist agenda. They want to pressure schools to conform to this socialist vision, and they're willing to use social media and the mainstream media, government, all of this to do it and pressure people. And if the people don't cave in, then destroy them, cancel them. Board member Anthony Zenobia accused administrators of asking for the change of course because of intimidation and threats. Like Piasek, he opposed using more federal funds for meals. If it's food and free lunch today, it will be forced masking, forced whatever we want to do in schools, because the mob will have the power to tell us what to do, Zenobia said. Exactly. These people are seeing the consequences of what happens when you give authority over to government. We're seeing that with the mask mandates. We're seeing that with the Biden administration, trying the vaccine mandates. You name it. It's a power grab. And if local schools want to give up their power, if they want to give up their voice to the federal government, well, this is the way it's done. Board members also stood by the original decision. Regisnik defended her previous comments about how families could become spoiled by receiving free meals. She said she was speaking from her own experience, feeling spoiled by the meals for her children. Yes, it can spoil families and mothers and fathers, because they will not feed their children if they know the government will do it. So why buy cereal in the morning when just send a kid off to school? Well, there are all kinds of benefits for actually feeding your children at your own table and talking to them about the school day that's ahead. The spoiled I refer to, it's me, it's all of us. If we rely on the system when we can provide for ourselves, see, the word can, these are people who can provide their own lunches for their own children, and they're opting out and they're giving the government that authority. Other board members said most of the feedback they'd received was thoughtful and informative. They said they reconsidered their vote after learning more about how many students could go unfed. Could go unfed. So, again, that's a weak argument when you say, well, there are students that might be hungry. If you look at the students and you look at their body mass index, BMI, and you look at where they should be in a healthy child, you will find that obesity is more of a problem than starvation. Obesity is more of a problem than underfed, or the so-called food insecure phrase that's being used today. What does that mean, food insecure? It's really subjective. So a student has to have snacks all during the day, and they can't get hungry at all, and that's a crime. That's terrible. No, there's nothing wrong with getting hungry. There's a big difference between being hungry and starving, and we need to worry about making sure children are not going unfed, but we don't have to feed them just because they're hungry at any given time during the day. I mean, everybody gets hungry during the day before a meal. That's part of the human experience. It doesn't mean it's a crisis that the government needs to step in. I made the earlier votes without really looking at all the implications. I wasn't really informed, and I apologize for that. See, again, apologizing to the cancel mob. Never, ever cancel. Never, ever apologize to the cancel mob, because they will never be satisfied. If you apologize to them now, they will say, well, why did you do it at the beginning? And they will continue to hold that against you. The truth is that many of our students are hungry. Really, really, give me actual proof of that throughout the day, school day, and we have the ability to do something about that. Actually hungry, really, prove that. Show me that. Show me statistical, verifiable data that students are hungry in the school. The ones that bring their lunch from home or have their family pay for their lunch. Show me that they're hungry. Now, if a student brings his lunch and loses it, or if he throws it away, or if he trades it away, and he's hungry because he got ripped off because another student took his sandwich and he traded his apple for a sandwich or whatever, and he got the raw end of a deal, that's his own fault. That's not because he didn't have the food. He just stupidly gave it away in his trade, which happens at schools. Board members said they'd received calls and emails from teachers, students, and families about personal experience with hungry students. Really? These little anecdotes. Really? Is that a widespread problem? Show me the evidence. Some community members also participated in a rally with the Alliance for Education in Waukesha, holding up signs and chalking, "When we aren't hungry, we learn better." Of course. We're not talking about starving children. We're talking about feeding people who already have the means to provide their own food. There's the original decision by the board provided free meals to qualified students, but they didn't give free meals to every student, which is ridiculous to do. Operators of food pantry serving Waukesha County and Hunger Task Force had also asked the board members to reconsider the decision. Board President Joseph Como said the feedback opened his eyes to situations he hadn't been aware of, and he changed his mind to make sure all children are fed, although he said the program was only a temporary solution. "I appreciate your input very much," he said. "I eat every meal every day. I cannot relate to being hungry. I've been blessed." And that's not the point. The point is not that children are hungry. The point is not children are starving. The point is, should we feed people who have the means to buy the food? Should we give that free lunch to everyone? That's the question. Not about hunger. It's not about poverty. It's not about those things. Those are addressed by the original qualifications for a free meal. If you are qualified to get a free meal, you will get one. But if you aren't qualified to get a free meal, you shouldn't get one. That's the point. Board members had previously voted in June to leave the program called the Seamless Summer Option. The U.S. Department of Agriculture had extended the program to offer free meals around year-round, allowing for more COVID-safe practices by eliminating the need to collect payments and allowing meals to be served more easily in the classrooms and outside. So they used the under the guise of, well, we don't want to have change being given, exchanging money. That's filthy, that's dirty, that'll spread COVID, and so they slipped this through. When board members had voted to leave the program, they planned to revert the district to the National School Lunch Program, which allowed students from low-income families to apply for free and reduced price meals. Yes. This can leave out students whose parents don't fill out application forms. Yeah, you do have to fill out the application form. So, if you want to get a free meal, you have to do something. You have to exert yourself in some way. It's kind of like this fake voter suppression. If you want to vote, you actually do have to go to the polls, and you have to spend a few minutes in there voting. It's so easy the way it is, but still, that seems to be inconvenient for people today. They're so spoiled. And those who don't qualify for free meals, but also don't have money for food money, that is questionable. If you don't qualify for a very generous free meal program, you probably do have food money. You have to allocate it. It's the student that's in the line and then stands there when there isn't money to pay the bill. That's the parent's problem. If the student that has to go back and sit at the table, I think we should do whatever we can so that students in our district don't have to experience those situations. Well, as I understand it, they actually do let the student go ahead and they get the meal on credit, and then they run up a debt. And the parents are really responsible for paying that debt. Well, many school districts have that debt, but they still don't demand payment from the parents. So it is, in a sense, still free meal, even and they don't turn the student down. All districts that participate in the National School Lunch Program were eligible to the extended Seamless Summer Option. Of the 97% of Wisconsin school districts that were eligible, Waukesha had been the only one to opt out of the extension this school year, according to the Department of Public Instruction. So, administrators previously issued a press release standing by the decision to opt out of the Seamless Summer Option, noting that it would take away incentives for families to submit information about their income, a traditional requirement to qualify for free meals. Yes, that's so simple and easy to do. You just fill out the form. Without those forms, the district would not have this information on file to quickly determine eligibility for free meals if the universal program came to an end. Additionally, these forms are used to estimate the percentage of students in the poverty, which determines the amount of funding received of various programs. However, as this is an issue faced by districts across the country, federal and state officials have shared guidance about alternative ways to calculate the needs rates. Okay, so the bottom line here is it's too bad that the Waukesha School District reversed itself. They had a wise and sound and fair policy to begin with, and the Hateful Mob won this round. So as Christians, we need to be vigilant, not cave in, not give in to the crowd, not bend to the pressure, and stay the course, and do what's right, and do the wise and smart thing. Well, I hope this has been a helpful follow-up on our last video. We'll talk to you later next week on another Christian Answers. God bless.